Hey pagan family, Scarlett here. I hope you all are doing well. So if you clicked on this video, you know we are going to be talking about silly things people say to pagans. And I'm going to give you a little guidance on how I like to respond to some of these things. And this is not my own idea. I've seen many pagan and witchy YouTubers do a video like this, but I just thought it'd be fun to throw my 2 cents into the mix, because if you are someone who is seeking out paganism in the modern world, you're going to run into some of these criticisms from other people from time to time. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. So get cozy, grab yourself some tea, because it's going to get a little bit spicy. So the first thing to keep in mind is that many of the people that you might be interacting with really don't know that much about topics like paganism and witchcraft. Even though these are movements that are growing here in America and beyond, it's still a bit niche. And we predominantly, at least here in the States, grow up in a Christian country for the most part, where there are a lot of misconceptions and incorrect ideas about paganism. So I try to keep that in mind in interacting with others. They probably don't necessarily have the right knowledge yet about what paganism is. So I really try not to get defensive. And for me, that's not too much of a challenge, because I'm very Libra. It takes a lot to get me angry, and I tend to really try and keep things, even-keeled in conversations. But every once in a while, someone does say something that I find really insulting, and I just try to, stay classy and do the best I can in answering their questions. So probably the most common thing you might hear in terms of an incorrect assumption or a criticism is people who say you worship the devil. I'm sure anyone who practices witchcraft or who is a pagan might have heard this from someone before. Luckily, it's much more often you're going to see this in online hate comments than someone saying this to your face, but it definitely does happen. And the way I like to respond to this statement is by reminding people that the devil is really a Christian concept. So personally, I'm a pagan that follows the pre-Christian belief systems. So of course the devil doesn't exist because he hadn't been invented yet by Christianity. So no, I don't personally worship the devil. However, this answer gets a bit more complicated for some witches out there who do actually work with the power of the devil, though they probably wouldn't term the figure with the name the devil, but there are even some satanic witches out there that do work with these forces and elements. So it's up to you if you are one of them, and just, kind of state your truth. Haters gonna hate. Do the best you can. But for the most part, most pagans and most witches don't work with the concept of the devil. So you can easily respond to this kind of statement by saying, oh, well, I work with the pre-Christian forces and deities of the world. So that, of course, doesn't apply, since the devil is a Christianized concept. And I have made a previous video where I get into this topic in a bit more detail, so I will link that down in the description box below if you'd like to check that out as well. So the next thing you might run into is people saying magic isn't real or witchcraft isn't real. Now, this can be a bit tricky depending on what kind of person you might be interacting with. So I would answer this question based on that. And it's also tricky because a lot of people conflate terms such as magic, paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, when these are all pretty different terms meaning different things. But for example, say I am talking to someone I know to be an atheist, and they are saying how, oh, magic's stupid, you know, none of it's real, you're playing make-believe. And I might respond by asking them their opinions on the placebo effect. Because when you're coming from a scientific mindset, and we know that the placebo effect is real, it is something that exists, it does affect your body, it does affect your life. So in that case, even if you don't believe in something like magic, if you are doing a type of ritual or a spell, it's more likely you're going to have the desired effect take place purely because of the placebo effect. So any magic that does exist or does not exist in the world is an extra layer to that piece, depending on your own belief structure. But even if you don't believe in magic at all, the placebo effect does still exist, and many people would say that that in of itself is magic. Now, if you were talking to someone from another religion, like a Christian, for example, you can bring up the fact of Christian prayer, which is another form of magic. A Christian might pray to God for something to happen in their life, just as a witch might perform a spell for something to happen. That effect is the same, just what you are addressing, whether it be deity or just nature as a whole, that might be different, but that's still the same intent. You can also bring up the fact of miracles. Many Christians believe in miracles, that Jesus Christ performed miracles. So if that is the case and the person you're speaking to believes that, then of course those miracles did exist back then. So why would someone think that they are something that no one else is able to tap into? Or that that magic only existed during the time of Jesus Christ but doesn't exist now? So those are a few different ways you could approach answering that type of question. But again, like I said, each person is coming from their own belief system, so I tend to approach it based on what I know about that other person. Now, in a similar vein to that previous statement, I've definitely heard people say that witches aren't real. So to me, a witch is a person that practices the art of witchcraft. So if you do something like a spell or a ritual, you can call yourself a witch. So as someone who has done those things in the past, I can pinch myself and be like, yep, I'm real. That means I am a witch in this instance. Now, I personally don't tend to refer to myself as a witch because I don't often do witchcraft. I'm much more of a religious pagan. But just by stating that, you know what, people who do witchcraft are witches. So thus, those people are in fact real. That's how I like to answer that particular question. Now, another thing you might hear, especially if you wear a pentacle necklace, is that a pentacle is an evil symbol. Now, I personally don't wear a pentacle necklace anymore. I usually wear a Mjolnir, and that's because I'm not a Wiccan, and a lot of people connect the pentacle with the Wiccan faith. However, a pentacle is definitely not evil, and it's quite silly when people say that. Now, the pentacle, as many witches and pagans know, it just represents the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, plus the 5th element, spirit. So the Christian church took that symbol, flipped it over upside down, and tied it to things like Satan and stuff like that. And then, of course, popular culture and the media played around with that concept too, so that's where they're coming from there. But I think by just calmly informing people that, you know what, it's actually a really ancient symbol, and the pentagram itself is really powerful. It actually contains the golden ratio within the symbol, and it simply just represents the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water, plus the 5th element, spirit. So the last silly thing I hear from people often is that paganism is a phase. Now, they might be meaning 2 different things with this. They might be meaning it's a phase within my own personal life that like, oh, I'm just, you know, a hippie pagan now and like I'll move on later when I grow up someday. And to that concept, I would state that, you know, my religious beliefs are really important in my life, and I've taken a lot of time to consider them and study the history, so I don't see myself changing anytime soon. Now, the other thing people might mean when they say paganism is a phase, they're stating that, oh, just right now, paganism is kind of trending or popular, but it's just a phase, you know, in the next couple decades, it'll fade out, no big deal. Now, to that I think it's very silly, because paganism has existed forever. And you can think about the entire existence of humanity as a timeline. So as humans, well, when did we create the first goddess statues? Well, that's, you know, looking at the Venus of Willendorf, that's from around 30,000 BCE. When was the first pagan temple erected? Well, that's Göbekli Tepe at around 12,000 years. So Christianity is only about 2,000 years, Judaism's only around 4,000 years, and Islam didn't exist till the 7th century. So when you look at that grand scale, there's no way paganism is a phase. In fact, the Abrahamic religions more look like a phase when you line it up against the grand timeline of human history. So a lot of people really don't think about that, but we as humans, we started as pagans. The earliest people, the earliest civilizations were celebrating nature spirits, gods and goddesses. So the Abrahamic religions coming from the desert and taking over the world a bit, that's kind of an aberration when you look at the grand scheme of things. And I do think that eventually paganism will return full force, and I hope it does happen. I think it'll be interesting to find out, though this is of course going to be something that will occur over a very long time span, so I'm not going to be alive to see it all the way through. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on these statements that I often hear. I want to hear from fellow pagans or witches out there. What silly things do you get told? And for me, because I am online, most of this stuff, you know, comes, you know, to me from comments on YouTube, so haters gonna hate, I don't worry about it. But every once in a while, I do get an angry person IRL, you know, who comes up to me and wants to debate religion. So I'd love to hear from you guys if that ever happens, or if you have any additional strategies for how to approach those difficult conversations. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm looking forward to reading all of your comments. So I will see you all next week. Bye.